Hello viewers, welcome to Big Man Business YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about Taiwan's top imports and exports. Keep watching, we got you covered. In 2020, Taiwan, an East Asian island bordered by the People's Republic of China, Japan, and the Philippines, imported $287.4 billion in goods from suppliers all over the world. This figure represents a 25.5% growth from 2016 to 2019 and a 0.5% increase from 2019 to 2020. The new Taiwan dollar has appreciated by 8.5% versus the US dollar since 2016, and has increased by 4.3% from 2019 to 2020, according to the average exchange rate for 2020. Imports paid for in weaker US dollars in 2020 will be more expensive due to Taiwan's stronger local currency. Using a continental perspective, more than two-thirds, which is 67.6% of Taiwan's total imports by value in 2020, came from Asian neighbors. Taiwan's European trade partners accounted for 13.4% of its import purchases, while North American items accounted for 12.9%. Oceania accounted for 3.5%, Latin America with 1.7%, and Africa 1.7%. With a population of 23.6 million people, Taiwan's total imports of $287.4 billion in 2020 equate to around $12,200 in annual product demand from each individual in the East Asian island province of China. Taiwan's top 10 imports. The following product groupings account for the majority of Taiwan's import purchases in 2020. The percentage share of each product category in terms of total imports into Taiwan is also indicated. $93.3 billion in electrical machinery and equipment accounts for 32.5% of total imports. $43.2 billion in machinery, including computer stands, at 15%. Mineral fuels, which include oil, are worth $29.6 billion, which is 10.3%. $14 billion in optical, technical, and medical equipment stands at 4.9%. $9.7 billion in vehicles account for 3.4%. $7.7 billion in plastics and plastic goods stands at 2.7%. $7.2 billion in iron and steel account for 2.5%. $7.1 billion in organic chemical stands at 2.5%. $6.2 billion in other chemical goods account for 2.2%. $4.9 billion in copper account for 1.7%. Taiwan's top 10 imports accounted for more than 3/4 or 77.6% of the total value of its foreign goods acquisitions. Optical, technological, and medical apparatus went up by 14%, cars were up by 8.2%, miscellaneous chemical goods up 5.9%, and plastics, both as a material and as objects derived from plastics, were the fastest growing import categories from 2019 to 2020, up by 5.3%. Mineral fuels, such as oil, came down by -33.2%, and organic compounds, have experienced the steepest annual decrease, was down by -17.6%. Taiwan's top 10 exports. Taiwan, a partially recognized East Asian country formerly known as the Republic of China, transported $346.6 billion in goods throughout the world in 2020. This is a 24.2% growth from 2016 to 2019 and a 5.2% increase from 2019 to 2020. It's worth noting that Taiwan was originally known as Formosa, and some online papers may refer to it as Chinese Taipei. Electronic integrated circuits are Taiwan's most important export. Over a third, or 35.5% of total shipments from Taiwan, province of China, are for that commodity. The new Taiwan dollar has appreciated by 8.5% versus the US dollar since 2016, according to the average exchange rate for 2020, and has increased by 4.3% from 2019 to 2020. Exports paid for in weaker US dollars are significantly more expensive for international customers due to Taiwan's stronger local currency. According to the most recent country-specific data available, mainland China accounted for 29.7% of the global total, the United States accounted for 14.7%, Hong Kong with 14.2%, Japan with 6.8%, Singapore with 5.5%, South Korea with 4.4%, Vietnam accounted for 3%, Malaysia with 2.7%, the Netherlands accounted for 1.8%, Germany got 1.8%, the Philippines with 1.6%, and Thailand got 1.6%. In terms of value, 73.3% of Taiwan's exports were supplied to other Asian countries, while 16.1% were sold to North American importers. Another 8.2% of Taiwan's exports went to Europe. Oceania, led by Australia, got 1.1%, Latin America, excluding Mexico but including the Caribbean, got 0.8%, and Africa received smaller percentages of 0.5%. With a population of 23.5 million people, Taiwan's total 2020 exports of $346.6 billion equate to nearly $14,700 for each citizen of the East Asian province. In terms of dollar value, the following export product groups will account for the majority of Taiwanese global shipments in 2020. The percentage share of each export category in terms of total Taiwan exports is also indicated. $174.3 billion in electrical machinery and equipment account for 50.3% of total exports. $44.7 billion in machinery, including computers, account for 12.9%. $18.6 billion in plastics and plastic goods is 5.4%. $16.8 billion in optical, technical, and medical equipment is equivalent to 4.8%. $10.1 billion in vehicle stands at 2.9%. $7.5 billion in iron and steel stands at 2.2%. $7.2 billion in organic compounds account for 2.1%. $7.1 billion in iron and steel articles stands at 2.1%. Mineral fuels, which include oil, are worth $6.3 billion, which is 1.8%. $4.1 billion in copper stands at 1.2%. The top 10 exports from Taiwan accounted for 85.6% of the total value of the country's global shipments. Electrical machinery and equipment is the fastest growing export category among the top 10, with an increase of 18.2% from 2019 to 2020. Optical, technical, or medical devices came in second with a 6.6% increase in export sales. Only Taiwanese shipments of machinery, including computers, increased in value by 4.6%. Mineral fuels, including oil, were the top decliner among Taiwan's top 10 export categories, with a minus 51.6% reduction year over year. Taiwan's top trading partners. The island of Taiwan, sometimes known as Chinese Taipei and formerly known as the Republic of China, is flanked on three sides by significant commercial partners: the People's Republic of China to the west, Japan to the east, and the Philippines to the south. In 2020, Taiwan exported $347.2 billion in goods around the world. This is a 24.4% increase from 2016 to 2019, and a 5.4% increase from 2019 to 2020. Using a continental perspective, 73.3% of Taiwan's exports were supplied to Asian countries, while 16.1% were sold to North American buyers. Another 8.2% of Taiwan's exports went to Europe. Oceania, led by Australia, got 1.1%, Latin America, excluding Mexico but including the Caribbean, got 0.8%, and Africa received smaller percentages of 0.5%. Here is a list of 15 of Taiwan's most important trading partners, the countries that imported the most Taiwanese shipments in terms of dollar value in 2020. The percentage of total Taiwanese exports for each import nation is also indicated. China, with $103.1 billion accounts for 29.7% of total Taiwanese exports. $50.9 billion in the United States stands at 14.7%. $49.3 billion in Hong Kong account for 14.2%. $23.5 billion in Japan stands at 6.8%. Singapore has a market capitalization of $19.2 billion, which is 5.5%. $15.2 billion in South Korea stands at 4.4%. $10.6 billion for Vietnam is 3%. Malaysia's export is worth $9.5 billion, which is 2.7%. $6.1 billion in the Netherlands is 1.8%. $6.1 billion in Germany accounts for 1.7%. $5.7 billion in the Philippines stands at 1.6%. Thailand is worth $5.3 billion, which stands at 1.5%. $3.4 billion in the United Kingdom stands at 1%. $3.2 billion for Australia accounts for 0.9%. $2.7 billion in Mexico stands at 0.8%. In 2020, the previously mentioned trading partners will account for nearly 9/10 or 90.4% of Taiwanese exports. Hong Kong, 22.1% valued at $49.3 billion increase. China, increased by 12.2%, which is valued at $103.1 billion. The United States saw an increase of 9.8%, which is valued at $50.9 billion. Singapore's increased by 5.4%, valued at $19.2 billion. From 2019 to 2020, Hong Kong raised its purchases of Taiwanese items at the fastest rate, with a 22.1% growth. Other countries that have seen rises include China with 12.2%, the United States with 9.8%, and Singapore up by 5.4%. South Korea was down by -10.1%, the Philippines went down by -8%, Germany went down by -7%, and the United Kingdom, which went down by -7%, were the top decliners among Taiwan's major trading partners. Thanks for watching this video. We are open to suggestions. Kindly drop your comments in the comment box and don't forget to subscribe to the Big Man Business YouTube channel. See you in the next video.